You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody. Since we were last together, the Appalachian Trail has been stricken by something that happens every day in other parts of the country. A guy who had been previously removed from the trail found his way back there and, armed with a machete, attacked hikers, killing one and injuring another. The shock that I and many hikers have felt has been so personal, so deep, and we've all tried to process it in our own ways. As far as this podcast is concerned, I considered stopping, because it seems so trite in comparison to the gravity of this terrible event. But that thought lasted just for a few seconds. Instead, I choose to continue in the same vein as I refuse to let this senseless act define the Appalachian Trail class of 2019. Of course, for those directly and even indirectly affected, it will forever be seen only in terms of this attack. All I can say to those people and their families is that the entire community grieves with you. But for the rest of us, I hope that we can continue with our hikes, our magnificent adventures, and complete what we started. The podcast, for many of you, because that's what you tell me, has provided proof that the trail is for everyone. It was before these events, and it will continue to be so long after this guy has been put away. One last thing. For those of you tempted to pull your spouses, daughters and sons from the trail, please think really hard about it. Although I can appreciate that temptation, remember that the Appalachian Trail is statistically safer than any city in America. It has suffered a terrible blow, but it remains safe. The killer is caught, and the hiker family is closer than ever. Now let's get on with the show, and let's hike.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, thanks for coming back again to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. This week we've got a very different show because, if you remember, several weeks ago I told you that RTK would be coming to join me and he'd be interviewing me for the show with listeners' questions rather. And he did that a couple of days ago before the terrible events I just spoke about. And the show will be about that. I intend to do another show later today. I'm now doing this on the Tuesday, I believe it is, and I'm hopefully going to get another one out later today. So this is a one-off, a kind of, I guess, a bonus, but there will be another one certainly within the next 24 hours. But before we move on, obviously, let's thank our sponsors, Sawyer. When I hit the trail in 2014, I soon discovered that I come with the wrong water filter. Everybody else had a Sawyer squeeze. Eventually, I bought a squeeze and I loved it. I'm going again this year, and top of my list of things to buy was the new micro squeeze filter by Sawyer. Like all Sawyer stuff, it just works. You can filter up to 100,000 gallons, and their full-size squeeze filter comes with a lifetime warranty. Last year, believe it or not, more than 4 million people got clean water through a Sawyer water filter. But if you think that Sawyer is just about water filters, you could not be more wrong. Nope, they supply everything to protect you, both in the backcountry and the backyard. Protect your gear and clothes as I did with their permethrin fabric treatment, which is 100% odorless after drying. With all the ticks and bugs around, this is an absolute must. They also provide sunscreens and first aid products. Find out more by visiting Sawyer.com. Thanks, guys. You know we appreciate your support. So this is just one interview, and it's Bruce interviewing me with listeners' questions. He wrote several to him, and he brought sheaths of paper with him, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it. Here's Bruce Matson and me. Surprisingly, on a camping trip, I'm sitting in a car, a very nice Volvo, at Devil's Backbone Brewery with my buddy Bruce Matson. And Bruce is the author of the Platinum Blazing the AT, and is also a 2018 thru hiker, and we had the show RTK last year, Return to Katahdin. So first, Bruce, hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Good morning.
And you very kindly offered to interview me with listeners' questions, none of which I've seen so far. You're thumbing through a few of them right now. So what you got?
Sure. Yeah. So I really enjoyed Ryan interviewing you, and you got to Newfound Gap, and thought it would be fun to have you be more the interviewee for a change. So thanks for letting me do this. Obviously, we spent some time together, you interviewing me, and as I'm not even sure the listeners know just how popular the podcast has become. I think Mighty Blue told me that there's about 39,000 downloads a month, so that's a lot of listeners out there. So, and not surprisingly, I got a lot of email questions. So, first, thanks for your questions, and second, apologize, I won't be able to get through them all. I did group them a little bit because they're similar, some very similar topics. So I'm ready to jump right in.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
So let me start here. So you're probably past the third of the way of the journey this year.
Yeah.
And before you know, you'll be in Harper's Ferry. You're already substantially through Virginia. So how's it feeling this time around?
Do you know what? One of the things, I knew this would be a different journey, and it has been a different journey. I've seen things I didn't see first time, and I'm not seeing things I did see first time, obviously because of the weather, and obviously that makes a difference. The biggest difference I've found, and my first answer to that question would have been something slightly different, but before, but now I'm doing it again, I realize how comfortable I feel in the woods. It surprised me. It really has surprised me how quickly I've got back into what it is. You know, there's certain muscle memory that obviously after 6 months in the woods in 2014, I appear to have developed, and it immediately swung into action when I first started the trail this time. And so I feel very comfortable in here. I love the fact that I've got to set a different journey, as I knew I would. I've met some great new people, which is lovely as well. And the one consistent thing between the two things has been the quality and the friendliness and the kindness of the people you meet every single time.
Okay, so you may have answered this, but one of the questions was, now that you're back after having been away for, I guess, 4 years, or 5 years since your last through hike, are you discovering anything that you remember you particularly enjoyed about the journey that you'd forgotten was a big part of a through hike?
It's those unexpected moments. For example, if you go around a corner, and when I went around the corner in 2014, I had no idea what was around there. I've come around a corner a few times this time, many times in fact this time, and said to myself, oh yeah, there's that. It's, you know, I had forgotten those things, or they're buried kind of relatively deep in my memory. And I've had to reread my own book a few times to recall what happened at certain places. But actually seeing things that you had stored in your mind, but you didn't really know the context of them. I've got much better context on the trip this year. So I think when I look back on this trip, I'll be able to look back and knowing that this happened in this place and this happened in this place. So I'll know the order of those things. So I've really enjoyed that part of it. Rediscovering things I did see in the past, but I don't remember where I saw them. But now I know where they are.
So let me ask you sort of the converse of that question. As you well know, when I finished my hike last year, I was done. I was tired. I really wasn't interested in hiking again. And as you also know, I'm very excited about coming back on the trail some. And sometimes, somewhere there changes, right, that you sort of filter out some of those tougher experiences. Have there been surprises to you about things you forgot you didn't like about being out on the trail?
The pain is real. It never goes away. Your feet are like hamburger patties. But look, you and I going hiking this morning, and I hiked yesterday. My feet were smashed up at the end of the day, as they always are, and yet I don't care. They feel fine again this morning. I think one of we were talking last night, weren't we, equating rehiking the trail with having a baby. Neither of us have ever done that. But, you know, you forget the pain of having a baby, I guess, and you just have another baby. So I'm hiking the trail again because all that horrible stuff, and there's tons of horrible stuff about this, just it all combines to become great stuff overall.
All right. So one thing we talked a lot about last year was planning, and maybe I plan more than the average person, or maybe more than you. Compare your planning this time to your first trip.
I did much more planning last time, and I didn't do much last time, because this time I went to do the Camino de Santiago, as you know, in Spain, and that was lovely. I really enjoyed that with my niece. And then I was in Spain for 3 months, writing and doing various other things. And so when I got back to the US, I knew I had to change my gear. In fact, nearly all my gear is different from what I had first time round. But literally, I was still packing. I was still buying stuff for the trail on the Saturday before I went away on the Monday. And I didn't pack my bag for the first time until the Monday morning, and then I left.
So do you recommend planning?
I do recommend planning. I do recommend planning, but not for me. I wish I could. I'm a bit of a last minute deadline person, but I meet the deadlines, and I'm not unhappy with the stuff I brought with me. It all works. Even those flipping snow chains, which weigh around £1 each, when we had snow in the Smokies, they are so helpful.
Yeah, I think it's now that we've sort of kidded about it, I think everyone approaches these things differently, and different things work for different people. Absolutely. So I don't think there is. I think if I was recommending an approach to someone, it would be figure out what works for you. Think about how you react to planning or not planning, and
every time
do whatever works for you. And planning was good for me, I think. I'm going to take one more question on a little personal side. I'll get deeper into the listener questions. Being prerogative, the interrogator this morning. So we've kidded about this too, and it's got to be on some people's minds. The first time I told you this, you forgot you had said it, but you said you would never, ever, ever leave in February because I wanted to leave early in the year. And it's amazing to me that on February 25th, you were camping at Hawk Mountain Shelter, and I was camping at Hawk Mountain Shelter on February 25, 1 year earlier. So give people a sense of whether you enjoyed the decision and the hiking by leaving early this year. I
think, and I'm sure I was February 26 actually at Hawk Mountain, but even then, I think that you're right. I never thought I would want to leave that early, and probably because of you last year, you were having a horrendous time. I remember you once saying to me, it's something that stuck with me forever. Was to move it forever. When you used to get to camp, you were so cold, all you could do was to get into your tent and try to keep warm. Well, that is darn miserable, isn't it? And I thought to myself, there were some cold nights this time in February and March, and really cold nights, and there was snow and so on. But once you've weathered that, the setup, the schedule for the rest of the year is perfect. I'm gonna finish this now, I suspect, in the last week of August. So I'll have July and August in New Hampshire and Maine. I mean, how beautiful is that going to be? So I actually now think, having completely changed my mind, of course, I now think it was a great time to start. I think late February is a great time to start. I know a lot of people think April, and I know that my friend Gary Sizer started in May. I think May the 10th or 11th, something like that. And he still did it. But I think February was a great start for me, and it really suited me. And we've met other people here who just don't like hiking in heat, so they wanted to get some hiking in the cold. So it was, you warm up. Let's face it, as you're going to find out later on, as if you start walking uphill, you're going to warm up, aren't you?
No question, yeah. And I'm happy I went, but there were some really tough. But I think for people listening, it wasn't every single day, every single night. But there were last year lots of times where it was brutally cold, and you really just didn't have any choice but hunker down in your tent. So, well, I was curious to see how you enjoyed leaving early this year. I'm going to move to listener questions a little more specifically now. One of the biggest topics, probably 8 different questions, all rotate around the idea of motivation. And so I want to ask you, having completed a thru hike is kind of a thing you've accomplished. Give people a sense of what were the factors that motivated, that encouraged you, that caused you to come out and do this again.
Well, my age, for a start. When I first did this, I was 61. And I remember my wife saying to me, look, if you're ever going to do this, you've got to do it now because you're running out of time. And I felt at the time she was right. But I did it, and it kind of changed my life in lots of different ways, with the books and the podcast and so on, and meeting everybody associated with the trail. And also, it is on your mind every single day. Literally, in my case, it is anyway, every single day. And so I thought when I started speaking about the Camino with my niece, I thought that'd be great. And then I thought to myself, well, I think I've got one more long hike in me. So I'm not a day hiker or a section hiker. I like the idea of a through hike. That's what I really like, that challenge. And because, as you know, I tried to do the John Muir Trail twice and cannot do elevation for some reason, the PCT and the CDT were out of bounds for me. And then the prospect of podcasting and sharing my journey on the trail, that made it, even to me, more exciting as well. I mean, I know I could stop any moment. If I decided to, I could stop and I would still be a through hiker because I've through hiked this before. But the satisfaction I'm going to get if I do get to the top of that brown sign again, so having done it twice, will be just as much as it was the first time. So I feel motivated every single day. And it goes back to the reason when I first did this, I was reading a book in Dahlonega the day before, and the preface of this book, and it says, this is going to be the thing you want to do more than anything else this summer. And it absolutely still is the thing I want to do more than anything else this summer.
Well, that's great. So this is a similar question, but it's got an important distinction to it. So how has all of this hiking changed the way you experience life on a day-to-day basis?
Oh my gosh. I think I've become more empathetic. I said to Cushy the other day, Cushy Life the other day, that I think hiking brings out the better parts in all of us. It subsumes perhaps some of the worst parts of us, and we all cooperate together, we all work together, we all play together, we all laugh together, and we all encourage each other. So in everyday life, I think that is a thing worth working for. And I certainly, I did a presentation once on the things, the way in which hiking has impacted my view of life. For example, the one I often say is take the views when you can, because they won't always be there. And you can apply that to lots of different aspects of life as well. And I find there are threads that relate to my life that I can go through. And will be the next book I'm going to write. It won't be necessarily about this trip. It will be about the way in which you can draw lessons from the AT in your everyday life.
So again, people are very interested in what's motivating you. So I'm going to assume one thing in this question, which is that hiking the AT is a fairly difficult, challenging activity.
You seem to recall that, don't you?
Was for me. So can you think back as to what might have been prior to the AT, the most difficult, challenging activity you had to address previously in your life?
Oh dear. I think I've had a very I've had a different life to a lot of people. I used to drink way too much. I used to behave incredibly badly all the time, almost as a reflex action. And resolving some of my behaviors of the past has been a difficult challenge for me. Cutting down on booze. I used to drink way too much. That was a challenge for me. In fact, I don't know whether I told you that the first 3 days of the AT, you get to Suches. And this is not a proud thing to say, but when I hiked it in 2014, my biggest fear was that I wouldn't be able to go 3 days without a drink. And I could. And it worked out, it was easy. And now I can easily go, I'll go days and days and days without a drink. I couldn't care less now, But I think changing those behaviours. I waltzed through life. I found life incredibly simple, left a lot of damage, I guess, behind me with people I was with sometimes. But I've been lucky enough to do exactly what I wanted to do in my life. And there's good and bad about that. But I've never, ever faced a physical challenge, anything like this.
I'll change topics a little bit. I love this question. It's two questions and they're related, so answer it any way you feel best. It says, could you tell us about the most amazing person you've encountered along the trail? What's the most inspiring why story you've encountered from a hiker on the trail?
Oh, wow. I could have done with a bit of notice that. The most amazing person. I suppose the distance in time from 2014, things fade in terms of interactions with people. One of the people I'm interacting with at the moment, and I've mentioned already, is Cushy Life. Cushy is, and I said this the other day when I was talking to her, I really feel that she's been the glue that holds a lot of us together. You know, she is empathetic. She reaches out to people. She got a great backstory, which she shares every now and then. She talks a lot, but she's always looking for the best in every single person. And I find that she's been an inspiration to a lot of people out here. But then, you know, I've met a bunch of other hikers who I thought, my God, that person's special. My team I hiked with in 2014, Leidenot and T-Bird and Trillium, who I fell out with a few times. But, you know, it was great to be part of a team. So these people, as you know, you sit around a campfire, or you just sit around a picnic table eating in the evening, and stories come out about what's happened to them in their lives and that, and they share this stuff. In terms of an interesting story, I think listening to everybody share their story. I tell you one story, and I won't. It's difficult not to identify the person. No, it's not, because it's pretty good. I met a woman this year called Dash, and it wasn't her story that got me. It was how she got her name. She says, on a gravestone, you see the date of somebody's birth and the date of somebody's death, and the dash in between is the stuff that matters. That is really good. I mean, that was a really good story.
I'm going to do a little more mundane question. So this listener says they hear a lot about food you eat off the trail, but they want to just get a little better sense of what you're eating on a day-to-day basis while on the trail.
Oh, right. Well, as you know, we had Trailtopia meals before, and they were great. But I think you have to reset your mind in many ways. Your expectations of food. When you go into town, you try to eat proper food and vegetables and fruits and so on. When you're on the trail, I get these either Trailtopia or Mountain House or various other companies, Backpackers Pantry. Boil water, pour it in, mix it up, and slush it all around, and then you eat it. And some of them taste great, some of them taste dreadful. That's breakfast. I then do the same for dinner. I have a hot meal for dinner as well, which I like. I then eat Cliff bars, Snickers bars during the day, a couple of those. I often get through a jar of peanut butter now in 2 days. And I have a wrap rather with tuna or salmon, the sort of general sort of stuff that people have on the trail. And I really am waiting every time to get into town, because, you know, you just have to shovel calories in your mouth in whatever form, the most efficient form you can. And I do that. I'm not saying I particularly enjoy all of it, but some of those meals are pretty darn good. And let me tell you, the Mountain House biscuits and gravy is my current new favorite.
I've never had that.
Oh, man.
Well, I got tired of oatmeal, so switching to biscuits and gravy might be a good choice.
It's the way forward.
So you got a lot of the trail left to go. I listened to your last podcast. I think you're feeling pretty good about your chances of getting to the finish line. You want to just touch on what you think might cause you to not get there?
The only thing would be injury. Or you know, something were to happen, I needed to be somewhere else. I can't imagine anything that would stop me now. I've become much more confident since I've been hiking with Trigger, Cushy and Ugg, because they're all better hikers than me, and I've just upped my game to stay with them as opposed to rushing to keep after them. I'm now comfortable hiking with them, which is good.
So like we said, you're more than a third, almost halfway finished. There's a lot of great sights to see, and you've commented many times about how, you know, everybody's hike is different. Some people go across match packs in a blizzard. Some people just find it to be the most beautiful spot on the whole trail. So for this year, having finished a good part of the first half of the hike, pick one or two highlights that were just particularly special and why?
Well, no question, the highlights for me were the Virginia Triple Crown. And there's a very recent to do Dragon's Tooth in beautiful weather, to do Max Patch in beautiful weather. Sorry, not Max Patch, McAfee Knob in beautiful weather, and Tinker Cliffs in beautiful weather. It was a real privilege. And I think if you get the chance to go up at dawn, as we did, to be there at dawn at McAfee Knob and see the sun rising, and a lot of people listening to the show have seen the pictures. They were just remarkable pictures, actually. And the experience, as I said at the time, whatever's burned on my retina right now will never go away from me. That's one of the great sights of my life. I mean, it really was. But then also, for example, I think it's called Big Fire Scald Knob, where I went through in 2014 with terrible weather. This time, it was glorious, and you can see Tennessee on one side, and you can see North Carolina on the other side. And of course, probably the most dramatic day was probably the Balds up at Round Board and Jane Board from Carver's Gap. It was a favourite part of my hike last time. It wasn't great weather last time, but this time it was. And then up Hump Mountain, which is just so dramatic.
Okay, how about, as you know, the older hikers like us tend to have a few more challenges physically. How have your injuries or lack of there gone? And give the listeners an idea of what kind of injuries you're observing just now that you've been out on the trail for a good amount of time.
Well, observing from other people, and it's the one tip I think any hiker who's done this successfully will tell you: do not go too fast too soon. Don't build up to those big miles, and just because you're able to do 25 miles, you shouldn't do it all the time. Lots of people have had shin splints. I haven't had shin splints myself so far. My feet, your feet are always going to hurt, but they work still. My knees have surprisingly held up remarkably well, because a lot of, remember all the downhills you used to smash your knees on all the time. I have fallen over a couple of times, about 11, I think it's 11 or 12, I think it's 11 actually, and fallen twice on my knees and cut both knees. But really, that's the only blood I've spilled so far. So for me, it's quite a good record so far. I had 45 falls first time, so I've got a bit of surplus to go right now.
Well, still got the White Mountains to go.
I know. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah.
So this listener says, that you often mention about how the trail provides, and I was wondering if this time around whether the trail is still providing.
It does. It provides, I think, as much as anything else. If one has a soul, I think it provides your soul with what you need at the time. I think there are times I'm walking through. I've tried this time to be far more in the moment than I was last time. Last time I spent the first 800 miles just beating myself up and apologising to everybody I'd upset in my life. It took 800 miles to do that, but this time I've tried to be here, and just glory, just look at the glory all around me. It's just magnificent all around me. And as you know, I'm not a religious person, but I said when I was up McAfee Knob and the sun came up, and I said to Trigger, who is quite a spiritual person, I said to him, if I was ever to believe in God, it would be this right here. It's just the most extraordinary sight. It was the most extraordinary sight I think I'd ever seen in my life.
I will tell the listeners that I was with Trigger and Mighty Blue and Cushy last night, and I got a chance to see some of their pictures from McAfee's Knob, and I will tell you that they were the greatest, most dramatic, most beautiful photos I've ever seen of that site. And if you're a follower of the AT, you know that it's probably the most photographed spot. And for me to say that was the best I've ever seen is a pretty strong statement, because there's a lot of beautiful, dramatic ones out there. So you did have I'm still amazed at a couple of photographs I saw last night. The lightness, everything was just spectacular. I think people who are listening to the podcast know that you went up there pre-dawn and were able to catch the sunrise, which of course always has a special light.
It was a beautiful day for it as well. Yeah.
So this is you talked a little bit about sort of your mental life on the trail. This is a little more practical. Have you thought of sort of like what's next in terms of your podcast or other adventures, or you mentioned a book? Have you used your time to think about what's next for life?
A little, yeah. I'm definitely going to develop the Hiking Radio Network, and I'm going to do a section hiking podcast. I've got somebody considering doing a history of hiking, which might be quite interesting for people. Not necessarily hiking the AT, but generally the history of hiking. And I want to develop one or two of those. In terms of hiking itself, as a child, my brother and I used to go on holiday with our parents to Wales, and they've completed a round Wales trip, which is all the coastal path of Wales, about 187 or 189 miles long. We're going to do that next year, and that should probably be one of my last bit longer hikes, I think. But you never know, do you?
Never know. Don't say never.
Never say never.
Well, I could make up some more. I don't know how long you want to go. We've been going about 30 minutes. Is that about right?
That's good. No, that's good. I'm happy with that. Yeah, it'll also cover most of the ones that
we've done well. We have done well in capturing. Again, we got lots of.
You have got
questions came in.
I've seen one there actually. I see the top one there.
I saw that one. So we didn't quite touch on this, and I think it's a good one. So as you peeked over my shoulder, is it harder or easier the second time around?
It's harder, no question about it.
Interesting.
5 years difference. It's easier from the point of view, as I say, I've got the muscle memory. I know how I'm doing. I don't look at every single burned out tree and think it's a bear, and every route and think it's a snake, which I did nearly all of Georgia. But I can feel the physical toll. Maybe it's because I'm in the moment now feeling that physical toll. Maybe when it finishes, I can reflect more on the two. And I think you're probably aware of that. When you get asked questions, when you're on the trail itself, you can't really give it the context of distance, can you? You can't think about it. I'm sure your thoughts about your hike must have changed since you finished and when you've started to work out what it's like. But I think in general terms, I'm finding it physically more difficult because I'm 5 years older.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk about the mental side a little bit. And this is a follow-up from the same listener. So is it harder to stay motivated now that you've already done it? So, and what do you use to keep yourself motivated daily?
Well, that thing about it's got to be the thing you want to do more than anything else this summer. I think I'm relaxed enough because I'm a through hiker, having done it, that I don't, if I stopped, I would still be a through hiker, as I said to you. But it makes me not want to stop because the thought of doing completing two through hikes in your 60s, well, I know it's not exactly Rondor country. 2 through hikes in your 60s must be a fairly rare thing, I suspect. So I think that's something I really want to get now.
That's good because that would be. I've gone through, as you know, we've spoken on and off for the last 6 months or so, and where I wasn't really interested in going hiking anymore, and now I'm having so much fun following you because as you go over the Roan Highlands, I remember when I went over the Roan Highlands. When you do a different section, I can relive my time, and it's been so much fun. But I do wonder, as this person does, would I be able to stay motivated? Because it's one thing to go out for a week or 2 weeks or even a month, but it's a long time out there. You don't sound like you're too worried about that. You're in a really good place. It sounds
I am.
like.
I'm very comfortable. That sort of thing isn't worrying me at all. I'm very comfortable with that. Thoroughly enjoying it.
So this person wants to know, you followed Jessa for a year and then you followed RTK for a year. Did following them have any impact on your hike this year?
Definitely. I thought I was determined to prepare more and didn't. But no, I think the two of you set a standard because you finished. It was incumbent upon me to try my hardest to finish, obviously. And I want to keep this record going. I want to do this again next year. I want to get another show where we follow another hiker. And hopefully we're going to pick up on somebody. I mean, I think when I first got an email from Jessa, and when I first spoke to you, we sat down actually over a beer, didn't we? I realized that the people I was speaking to were really solid and really, really were going to do this. And both of you did it. And I thought to myself, I feel much the same way. I feel I'm solid. I'm going to do this. And I think I'm going to do it again, to be honest with you. In fact, I jokingly, I think I said to somebody that my Mighty Blue class of 2019, which I've been trying to contact them up, and it's been difficult to get some of the recordings done properly. But I said, well, on average, 2 of the 8 of us are going to finish. And I'm one of them. So there's only one of you 7.
It's daunting when you realize those statistics. And I remember asking you, I don't know why it never dawned on me, halfway through my through hike, and we would speak once or twice or 3 times a week. It dawned on me one time. I said, well, Steve, what happens if I just don't make it? 3 out of 4 people don't make it, but thankfully,
you did it.
I did. So, had a great time following you. It's good to see you in Virginia, and you physically and mentally really do seem like you're going to get to Katahdin. And so, I'm going to reserve the right, if I can do it, to come up to New England, maybe see you one more time, and maybe do one more of these interviews.
Cool. Very cool. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for taking the time, Steve. And we're all following you and hoping the best for your continued journeys.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed that. I didn't know any of the questions, and perhaps I went off at a few tangents, so I do apologise for that. As I say, this is a very strange time to be, doing a podcast, and I feel this was an appropriate one to put out right now. But right after I put this out, I'm going to try putting another one out as well. So watch out for that. And as I say always, I'll see you next time.